Grace Bennett stood at the corner of Maple and 3rd, her hand tied around Sophie's smaller one as the October wind pulled at their coats. The kindergarten building loomed ahead, its brick walls warm in the early morning light. But Grace felt cold, her chest heavy with the weight she carried every single day. Sophie tugged at her sleeve, her dark curls bouncing as she pointed to a cluster of mothers near the entrance. "Mommy, can I have a playdate with Emma?" Sophie asked, her voice bright with hope. Grace's throat tightened. She forced a smile, brushing a curl from Sophie's forehead. "We'll see, sweetheart." They walked closer, and Grace felt the shift, the way conversations paused, the way eyes flickered toward her and then away. She'd learned to recognize it, the judgment that clung to her like smoke. The single mom librarian, the one who'd had a baby out of wedlock, the one who didn't belong in this tidy suburban circle. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. One mother, Patricia, gave a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Morning, Grace." "Morning," Grace replied, her voice steady even as her stomach churned. Sophie kissed her cheek and darted toward the school doors, and Grace watched her go, her heart aching with a love so fierce it scared her. She turned and walked back toward the library, the autumn leaves crunching beneath her feet, the sky gray and heavy above her. At the library, Grace moved through her morning routine with practiced ease. She shelved returns in the children's section, her fingers trailing over familiar spines. She paused at a picture book about mothers and daughters, the cover showing a woman and child embracing beneath a tree. Her vision blurred, and she blinked hard, shoving the book back onto the shelf. The memory came without warning, as it always did. Vanessa's voice on the phone, desperate and shaking. "Grace, please. I can't do this. Just for a few months. I swear, just until I get back on my feet." Newborn Sophie had been so small in Grace's arms, her tiny fingers curled around nothing, her eyes searching for something she couldn't name. And Grace had looked at her sister, at Vanessa's hollow eyes and trembling hands, and she'd said yes. She'd said yes because someone had to. Because their parents were gone, dead in a boating accident 2 years before, and they only had each other. Except Vanessa had left. The months stretched into years, the phone call stopped, and Grace became mom. That evening, Grace stood at the stove, stirring pasta while Sophie sat at the kitchen table, crayons scattered around her. The apartment was small, the walls thin, but it was theirs. Sophie hummed as she drew, her tongue poking out in concentration. "Mommy, look." Sophie held up her drawing, a family portrait with 3 stick figures. She pointed to each one. "Me, you, and the daddy I'm going to have." Grace's hand stilled on the spoon. She turned, forcing her voice to stay light. "That's beautiful, honey. When am I going to get a daddy?" Sophie asked, tilting her head. Grace's chest tightened. She crossed to the table and knelt beside Sophie, tucking a curl behind her ear. "You have me. Isn't that enough?" Sophie considered this, then nodded. "Yeah, but Emma has a daddy. And Tyler. And everyone." Grace pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, the smell of safety and love. "You're so loved, Sophie. Don't ever forget that." After dinner, after the bath and the bedtime story, after Sophie's breathing had deepened into sleep, Grace sat at her laptop in the dim glow of the screen. Her manuscript stared back at her, the cursor blinking on page 43. The Things We Keep. She'd written it 5 years ago, before Sophie, when she'd worked at a publishing house in New York and believed her dreams were within reach. Now the words felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else. Her phone buzzed on the table, and Grace glanced at it. An unknown number. A photo loaded slowly, and her breath caught in her throat. Vanessa on stage, spotlights washing her face in gold, a guitar in her hands. The caption read, "She hasn't forgotten." Grace's hands trembled as she deleted the message. She sat in the dark, her heart pounding, the walls closing in. Vanessa. After 5 years of silence, Vanessa was reaching out. But why now? And what did she want? Grace pressed her palms to her eyes, fighting the sting of tears. She'd built this life, fragile as it was, on a foundation of lies. She was Sophie's mother in every way that mattered, except the one that counted on paper. And if Vanessa came back, if she wanted Sophie, Grace had nothing. No legal standing. No rights. Just love. And sometimes, love wasn't enough. 2 days later, Grace was shelving books in the quiet of the afternoon when the door swung open, letting in a gust of wind and a man who made the room feel smaller. He was tall, his dark hair slightly disheveled, wearing an expensive coat that hung open over a simple sweater. His presence was magnetic, the kind that drew eyes without effort. Grace straightened, smoothing her cardigan. "Can I help you?" He glanced around, his gaze sharp and assessing, then settled on her. "I need a quiet place to work. Somewhere people won't bother me." His tone was blunt, almost cold, but Grace saw something beneath it, a weariness that mirrored her own. She nodded toward the back corner. "There's a table by the window. It's usually empty this time of day." "Perfect." He started to walk away, then paused. "Do you have books on memoir writing?" Grace led him to the nonfiction section, her fingers trailing over spines until she found what she was looking for. She handed him 3 books, including one on grief writing. "These should help." He took them, his fingers brushing hers for a moment. "Thank you." "You're welcome." She hesitated. "I'm Grace, by the way, if you need anything else." "Dominic." He didn't offer more, and she didn't ask. Over the next week, Dominic became a fixture in the library. He arrived at noon, set up his laptop at the corner table, and worked in silence. Grace found herself noticing him, the way his brow furrowed when he was thinking, the way he ran his hand through his hair when he was stuck. She brought him coffee at 3 o'clock, a ritual that started by accident and became habit. "You don't have to do this," he said one afternoon, looking up as she set the cup beside his laptop. "I know," Grace said, "but you look like you could use it." His lips curved into a faint smile, and something shifted between them, a crack in the wall he'd built around himself. "Thank you." They talked in fragments, conversations that lasted minutes but felt longer. He was trying to write about loss, he said, about making peace with something he couldn't change. Grace understood that. She shared that their parents had died years ago, but she didn't mention Vanessa, didn't mention Sophie. Then one Thursday, Sophie came to the library after school with Margaret, her elderly neighbor. Sophie burst through the door, her backpack bouncing, her face lit with joy. "Mommy!" Grace caught her in a hug, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. When she looked up, Dominic was watching, his expression unreadable. Sophie noticed him immediately. She walked over, bold as always, and peered at his laptop. "Are you writing a story?" Dominic blinked, caught off guard. "Something like that. My mommy writes stories too," Sophie announced. "She used to work at a big place with lots of books. She was going to be famous." Grace's cheeks flushed. "Sophie, that's enough." But Dominic's gaze had shifted to her, curious now. "Is that true?" Grace shrugged, uncomfortable. "I dabbled. It was a long time ago. Can I read something you wrote?" "No." The word came out too quickly, too sharp. She softened it with a smile. "Maybe someday." That night, after Margaret had taken Sophie home for dinner, Dominic lingered at closing time. Grace locked the door and turned to find him still at his table, watching her. "You're good with her," he said. "Your daughter." Grace's chest tightened. "She's my whole world. I can tell." He paused. "It must be hard, doing it alone." Grace didn't know how to answer that, so she didn't. Instead, she asked, "What are you writing about?" "Really?" Dominic looked away, his jaw tightening. "My brother. He died a few years ago. I couldn't save him." The pain in his voice was raw, and Grace felt an answering ache in her own chest. "I'm sorry." "Yeah." He stood, gathering his things. "Me too." As he walked past her, he paused. "Good night, Grace." "Good night, Dominic." After he left, Grace stood in the empty library, her heart pounding. She hadn't felt this in years, this pull toward someone, this want. But wanting was dangerous. Wanting meant risking the truth. And the truth could cost her everything. The weeks that followed blurred together, a dance of stolen moments and careful words. Dominic stayed later, and Grace found reasons to linger after closing. They shared takeout in the quiet of the library, surrounded by books that held other people's stories while they guarded their own. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, Dominic finally opened up. "My brother, Tommy, he trusted the wrong people. I built software that was supposed to protect him, but it didn't. A data breach exposed his location, and they found him. Killed him." Grace reached across the table, her hand covering his. "That wasn't your fault, wasn't it?" His eyes met hers, dark with guilt. "I should have been more careful. Should have protected him better." "You can't control everything," Grace said softly. Sometimes bad things happen, and it's no one's fault. Dominic turned his hand over, his fingers lacing with hers. You sound like you know something about that. Grace's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him. Wanted to explain about Vanessa, about Sophie, about the 5 years of lies. But the words stuck, trapped behind fear. My parents, she said instead. They died in a boating accident. It was sudden. One day they were here, the next they weren't. I'm sorry. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, and the touch sent warmth through her. The moment stretched between them, fragile and electric. Then Dominic leaned forward, and Grace met him halfway. Their lips touched, soft and tentative, and Grace felt something crack open inside her, something she'd kept locked away for so long. When they pulled apart, Dominic's forehead rested against hers. Grace. I know, she whispered. Over the next days, Dominic met Sophie officially, bringing her a sketchbook and colored pencils that made her eyes go wide with delight. They went to the park, the three of them, and Grace watched Dominic push Sophie on the swings, his laughter mixing with hers. It felt like a dream, like something too good to be real. But that night, Sophie woke screaming. Grace rushed to her room, gathering her daughter in her arms as Sophie sobbed against her chest. What's wrong, baby? Tell mommy. I had a bad dream, Sophie whimpered. You left me. Like everyone leaves. Grace's heart shattered. I'm never leaving you. Never. I promise. Sophie pulled back, her eyes searching Grace's face. Mommy, why don't I have a daddy? Why are there no pictures of me as a baby with you? The question hung in the air, sharp and accusing. Grace's mind raced. Sophie, Emma's mommy showed me pictures from when Emma was a baby. There were lots. But we don't have any. We do. Grace lied, her voice trembling. They're just packed away. Sophie didn't look convinced, but she let Grace tuck her back into bed. Grace sat beside her until she fell asleep, then retreated to the bathroom and let the tears come, silent and wrenching. Later, sitting on the floor with her back against the tub, Grace's phone buzzed. An email from an entertainment news blog. Subject, request for comment. Vanessa Bennett's secret daughter. Grace's blood turned to ice. She opened it with shaking hands. Ms. Bennett, we're running a story about rising star Vanessa Bennett and the daughter she left behind 5 years ago. We'd like your comment on raising your sister's child and whether you plan to return her now that Vanessa has achieved success. Please respond by. The phone slipped from Grace's fingers. The walls closed in, the air too thick to breathe. It was happening. The lie was unraveling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Grace pressed her hands to her face, her whole body shaking. She thought of Dominic, of his smile, of the way he'd kissed her. She thought of Sophie, asleep in the next room, innocent and trusting. And she knew, with a certainty that made her sick, that she was about to lose everything. Grace tried to ignore the email, deleting it and blocking the sender, but 48 hours later, Vanessa walked through the library doors like she owned the world. She was stunning, her blonde hair perfectly styled, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, a leather jacket that probably cost more than Grace's monthly rent. Behind her stood a man in an expensive suit, his smile too smooth, his eyes calculating. Grace's hands froze on the book she was holding. Vanessa. Grace. Vanessa's voice was different now, polished, confident. She glanced around the library with barely concealed disdain. Can we talk? Somewhere private. Grace led them to her small office, her heart hammering against her ribs. She closed the door and turned to face her sister. What are you doing here? I came for my daughter. Vanessa said it simply, like she was picking up dry cleaning. Grace's vision blurred. Your daughter? You haven't called in 5 years. You abandoned her. I was sick. Vanessa snapped, her composure cracking. I had problems, Grace. But I'm better now. I'm sober. I have money, a career. I can give Sophie everything. The man stepped forward, extending his hand. James Porter. I'm Vanessa's manager. We're prepared to make this transition as smooth as possible. Grace ignored his hand. There's not going to be a transition. Sophie is my daughter. James's smile tightened. Actually, legally, she's not. Vanessa is listed as the mother on all documents. You have no legal custody, no adoption papers. You're just the aunt who's been babysitting. The words hit like fists. Grace turned to Vanessa, searching for the sister she'd once known. You can't do this. She doesn't even know you. That's your fault, Vanessa said, her voice breaking. You kept her from me. You left. Grace shouted, her control shattering. You begged me to take her, then you disappeared. I've been the one waking up at night, going to doctor's appointments, teaching her to read. Me, not you. Vanessa's eyes glistened with tears. I know, and I'm grateful. But I'm her mother, Grace. I want her back. James pulled out a folder, setting it on Grace's desk. We've filed for custody. The hearing is next week. You can cooperate and make this easier on Sophie, or you can fight and drag her through a media circus. Your choice. Grace stared at the papers, her hands shaking. Get out. Grace, Vanessa started. Get out. Grace's voice cracked. Both of you. They left, and Grace collapsed into her chair, her whole body trembling. She grabbed her phone and called Margaret, her voice barely holding together. I need help. That evening, in Margaret's warm kitchen, Grace told her everything. Margaret listened, her lined face calm, and when Grace finished, the older woman reached across the table and took her hand. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I knew, Margaret said softly. From the beginning. I could see it in your eyes, the fear every time someone asked about Sophie's father. Grace's tears fell freely now. What do I do? You fight, Margaret said firmly. And I'll help you. I practiced family law for 30 years. I know people. But even Margaret's confidence couldn't ease the dread in Grace's chest. The next day, Grace planned to tell Dominic everything, to confess before he found out another way. She texted him, asking to meet that evening. Then her phone rang. Sophie's school. Ms. Bennett, there's been an incident. Someone picked up Sophie early, claiming to be her mother. We tried to call, but Grace didn't hear the rest. She was already running. Grace burst into the school office, her breath ragged, her vision swimming. Where is she? Where's my daughter? The principal, Mrs. Chun, looked stricken. Ms. Bennett, I'm so sorry. The woman had identification showing she was Sophie's mother. We had no reason to. Where did they go? Grace's voice was steel. I don't know. She didn't say. Grace called Vanessa's number with shaking hands. It rang twice before Vanessa answered, Sophie's crying audible in the background. She's fine, Grace. We're at the Fairmont. She just needs time to adjust. Adjust? Grace's voice broke. She's terrified. Bring her back. Now. No. Vanessa's voice hardened. You have 24 hours to sign over guardianship voluntarily, or we go to court and to the press. James has everything ready. Your choice. The line went dead. Grace stood in the school hallway, her world crumbling, and dialed Dominic. He arrived at her apartment within minutes, concern etched across his face. Margaret was already there, her presence a small comfort. Grace sat them both down, and the words came tumbling out, 5 years of secrets spilling into the open. Sophie isn't mine. Not biologically. She's my sister's daughter. Vanessa left her with me when she was a baby and never came back. Until now. Dominic's face went blank, processing. You've been lying to me. I was protecting her, Grace said desperately. Protecting us both. Protecting. Dominic stood, his voice rising. You lied about everything. Your whole life is a lie. It's not like that. My brother died because people kept secrets. Dominic's eyes blazed with pain. Because information was hidden, because no one told the truth. And now you. He stopped, his jaw clenched. I can't do this. Dominic, please. But he was already walking to the door. He paused, his back to her. I thought you were different. I thought you were real. Then he was gone, and Grace collapsed, her sobs tearing through her. Margaret held her, murmuring comfort, but the words couldn't reach her. She'd lost him, and she was about to lose Sophie too. An hour later, Grace drove to the Fairmont, her eyes red but her resolve hardening. She knocked on the hotel room door, and Vanessa answered, looking exhausted. I want to see her. Vanessa stepped aside. Sophie sat on the bed, clutching a stuffed rabbit, her face tear-streaked. When she saw Grace, she ran, throwing herself into Grace's arms. Mommy, I want to go home. Grace held her tight, breathing in her scent, memorizing the feel of her. I know, baby. I know. Vanessa watched them, something breaking in her expression. Grace, can we talk? Just us. They stepped onto the balcony, the city lights spread below them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Vanessa's voice came, small and scared. I don't know if I can do this. Be her mother. I'm terrified I'll fail her again. Grace turned to her sister, seeing past the glamour to the broken girl beneath. Then why are you doing this? James said. Vanessa stopped, something shifting in her eyes. He said this was the only way to fix my image. To be redeemable. And you believe him? Vanessa's tears fell silently. Before she could answer, the door opened and James stepped out, his expression sharp. Vanessa, we need to stay on message. Grace, you should leave. We'll see you in court. Grace met his eyes and saw it clearly now. He didn't care about Sophie. He didn't care about Vanessa. This was all a game to him, and Sophie was just a pawn. You're using her, Grace said quietly. Using both of them. James's smile was cold. I'm doing what's best for my client. Now leave, or I'll call security. Grace looked at Vanessa, waiting, hoping. But her sister's eyes dropped, and Grace understood. Vanessa wasn't strong enough to fight him. Not yet. Grace kissed Sophie's forehead one more time and walked away, her heart shattering with every step. 1 week bled into the next. Grace moved through the days like a ghost, building her case with Margaret's help. They gathered documents, photos, school records, 5 years of proof that Grace had been Sophie's mother in every way that mattered. Dr. Rachel Foster sat across from Grace's lawyer, her expression torn. Grace has been exemplary. Every appointment, every vaccination, every concern, she's been there. Vanessa's name is on the birth certificate, but I've never seen her. Not once. The supervised video calls with Sophie were torture. Each night, Sophie's face filled the screen, her eyes red from crying. When can I come home, Mommy? Grace forced brightness into her voice. Soon, baby. I promise. But she wasn't sure she could keep that promise. The preliminary hearing was brief and brutal. Grace sat across the courtroom from Vanessa, who looked perfect in a conservative dress, her hair pulled back, every inch the reformed mother. James had coached her well. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, listened to both sides, then made her ruling. I'm ordering home studies for both parties. Ms. Chun from Child Protective Services will conduct evaluations. We'll reconvene in 30 days. 30 days. Grace could barely breathe thinking about it. She tried calling Dominic, leaving voicemails that went unanswered. Margaret reported seeing him at his rental house, lights on at all hours, bottles piling up in the recycling. He was drowning, and Grace couldn't reach him. One afternoon, she passed him on the street. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, she saw the hurt, the longing, the war inside him. Then he looked away and kept walking, and Grace felt something die inside her. That night, Linda Chin arrived for the home study. She walked through Grace's modest apartment, taking notes, her expression unreadable. Sophie's drawings covered the refrigerator. Books lined every wall. The air smelled like home. Tell me about Sophie, Linda said, sitting at the kitchen table. And Grace did. She told her everything. The late-night fevers, the first day of school, the nightmares about being alone. She showed Linda Sophie's baby book, filled with photos and milestones, all documented by Grace's hand. Linda's pen moved across her notepad. And Vanessa? Where was she during all this? Gone. Grace's voice was steady now. She was sick, struggling. I don't blame her for that. But she left, and I stayed. I chose Sophie every single day. Linda nodded slowly. I'll need to speak with Sophie. Of course. As Linda left, Grace stood at the window, watching the sun set over Boston. The battle had only begun, and she had no idea if love would be enough to win it. Linda Chin's visit to Vanessa's hotel suite was everything Grace had hoped for. Margaret called with the update, her voice cautiously optimistic. The suite was sterile, toys still in boxes. Linda asked Vanessa basic questions about Sophie's routine, favorite foods, bedtime. Vanessa couldn't answer half of them. Grace's hands trembled around her coffee cup. And Sophie? Linda interviewed her yesterday. Used play therapy. Asked her to draw her family. Margaret paused. Sophie drew you, me, and herself. When Linda asked about Vanessa, Sophie said, That's the pretty lady. She seems sad. Hope flickered in Grace's chest, fragile as candlelight. Dr. Foster's testimony had been powerful too, documenting years of Grace's attentive care, Vanessa's complete absence from medical records. Then the news broke. Grace was shelving books when her phone exploded with notifications. A tabloid headline screamed across the screen. Rising star's secret, sister stole my baby. The article was vicious, painting Grace as a manipulator who'd kidnapped her sister's child, kept her from her biological mother for years. Photos of Grace leaving work, grainy and unflattering. appeared alongside glamorous shots of Vanessa on stage. Within hours, reporters camped outside the library. Grace's boss, apologetic but firm, suggested she take leave, just until this blows over. For the library's sake. Grace walked out through a gauntlet of cameras and shouted questions. At home, more reporters waited. She pushed through them, locked her door, and collapsed against it, her breath coming in gasps. Her phone rang constantly. Social media tore her apart. Half the internet called her a hero, the other half a monster. The truth didn't matter. Only the story did. That night, Dominic saw the news segment while flipping channels. He watched Grace's face on screen, saw the fear in her eyes, the reporters surrounding her like wolves. The anchor's voice droned on about custody battles and family drama, but Dominic wasn't listening anymore. He saw it clearly now, what he'd been too hurt to see before. Grace hadn't lied out of malice. She'd lied out of love, out of desperation to protect a child no one else wanted. His own brother's face flashed in his mind. Tommy, who died because someone had hidden a security flaw, kept secrets that killed. But Grace's secret hadn't destroyed, it had saved. It had given Sophie 5 years of love and stability. Dominic stood, grabbed his keys, and drove to Grace's apartment. The reporters were gone now, but he could see the damage they'd left behind. He knocked, and after a long moment, Grace opened the door. Her eyes were red, her face pale. When she saw him, something broke in her expression. "Dominic, I saw the news," he said quietly. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside, and he entered the small apartment that felt more like a home than anywhere he'd lived in years. They sat on her worn couch, the silence heavy between them. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I was so caught up in my own pain, my own fear, that I couldn't see yours. You weren't keeping secrets to hurt people. You were protecting someone you love." Grace's tears fell silently. "I should have told you. I wanted to. Every day. I know." He took her hand. "And I should have listened. Should have trusted that you had reasons. Tommy died because of malicious secrets, because people prioritized profit over safety. What you did was the opposite of that. You sacrificed everything for Sophie." Grace leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her, feeling the tremors running through her body. "I'm going to lose her," she whispered. "James leaked this story, and now everyone thinks I'm a kidnapper." "You're not going to lose her," Dominic said firmly. "I won't let that happen." At the Fairmont, Vanessa stared at her phone, scrolling through article after article. Her face was everywhere, but so was Sophie's. Photographers had caught Sophie leaving school, her small face confused and scared. The comments were brutal. "Using a child for publicity. Disgusting. That little girl doesn't even know her. This is abuse. Grace raised her. Vanessa abandoned her. Biology doesn't make you a mother." Vanessa's hands shook. James had promised this would help her career, that the story of a reformed mother reclaiming her daughter would make her sympathetic, relatable. Instead, the world saw her as a monster. She opened James's laptop while he was in the shower, password already saved. His email was open. The subject line made her stomach drop. Reality show pitch. Vanessa's redemption, mother and daughter reunion. She clicked it. Page after page of planned episodes, manufactured drama, Sophie's trauma packaged as entertainment. James had sold her story, sold Sophie's pain, to the highest bidder. Vanessa's vision blurred. She thought of Sophie's face when they'd picked her up from school, the terror in her eyes. She thought of Grace, who'd given up everything, who loved Sophie with a fierceness Vanessa had never felt. When James emerged, toweling his hair, Vanessa stood with the laptop open. "What is this?" His expression flickered. "Vanessa, you're using her. Using us both. This was never about me being a mother. It was about your career. I'm protecting your interests. Get out." Her voice was cold, final. "We're done. The custody suit, the relationship, all of it. Get out." James's face hardened. "You'll regret this. Without me, you're nothing." "Maybe," Vanessa said. "But at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror." After he left, Vanessa sat in the silence, her phone heavy in her hand. She dialed Grace's number. It rang 3 times before Grace answered, her voice cautious. "Vanessa? Can we talk? Just us. No lawyers, no James. Please." There was a long pause. Then, "Margaret's house. Tomorrow at noon. I'll be there." Margaret's garden was beautiful even in late autumn, the last roses clinging to their stems. Vanessa arrived exactly at noon, her hands shaking as she knocked. Margaret answered, her sharp eyes assessing, then stepped aside. Grace sat at the kitchen table, Dominic beside her, his presence a quiet support. Vanessa's eyes widened when she saw him, but she said nothing, just took the seat across from them. "Thank you for coming," Grace said quietly. Vanessa's laugh was bitter. "I owe you that much." She pulled out her phone, showing them the reality show pitch. This is what James wanted. To exploit Sophie, exploit all of us, for ratings. Grace's face went pale. He was going to put her on television? Every moment. Every tear. He had it all planned out. Vanessa's voice broke. "I thought I wanted her back because I was better, because I'd changed. But James convinced me it was the only way to fix my image, to be redeemable. I let him use my daughter." "She's not a tool," Grace said, her voice fierce. "I know." Vanessa met her eyes. "And I'm not ready to be her mother. I'm 6 months sober, Grace. 6 months. I'm still figuring out who I am without the drugs, without the chaos. Sophie needs stability. She needs you." Grace's tears fell freely. "What are you saying?" "I'm withdrawing the custody suit." Vanessa's hands trembled on the table. "But I want to be in her life. Not as her mother, but as her aunt. I want to visit, to watch her grow up. I want her to know I love her, even if I can't be what she needs right now." "Vanessa, you gave her 5 years of love when I couldn't. Let me give her this. Let me do the right thing for once." Grace reached across the table, taking her sister's hand. They sat like that, tears streaming down both their faces, years of pain and anger dissolving into something softer. Margaret brought tea, her eyes glistening. Dominic squeezed Grace's shoulder, and she looked up at him, love and gratitude shining in her eyes. Later that evening, after Vanessa had left to file the withdrawal papers, Dominic walked Grace home. The reporters were gone, the street quiet under the streetlights. At her door, he turned to her, his hands gentle on her face. "I never stopped loving you," he said. "Even when I was angry, even when I walked away. You've always been it for me." "I love you too," Grace whispered. "I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I didn't understand." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "We'll do better. Both of us. No more secrets." "No more secrets," she agreed. Inside, Grace sat at her laptop and opened her manuscript. "The Things We Keep." She deleted the title, typed a new one, "The Family We Make." And for the first time in 5 years, the words came easily. 2 months later, Sophie burst through the door of their apartment, her backpack flying. "Mommy, we learned about fractions today." Grace caught her in a hug, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, still marveling that she was home, that she was safe. "Tell me everything." The legal papers had been finalized. Grace had full custody, with Vanessa listed as the biological mother, but designated as Aunt Vanessa in all official documents. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and that mattered more than anything. Sophie was in therapy, working through the confusion and fear of those weeks apart. Dr. Foster said she was resilient, that children could heal when surrounded by love. And Sophie had plenty of that now. That weekend, Vanessa came for her weekly visit. She brought art supplies and her guitar, and she and Sophie sat on the floor drawing while Vanessa hummed melodies. Grace watched from the kitchen, her chest tight with emotion. "She's good with her," Dominic said, slipping his arms around Grace's waist. "She is." Grace leaned back against him. "I think she's finally figuring out who she is. And that doesn't have to include being a full-time mother. And you're okay with that?" Grace turned in his arms, looking up at him. "I'm more than okay. Sophie has more people loving her now than she did before. That's all that matters." At work, the whispers had mostly died down. Some colleagues still looked at her strangely, but others had rallied around her, bringing her coffee, asking about Sophie. The head librarian had welcomed her back with a hug. "You did the right thing," she'd said. "Don't let anyone tell you different." Grace and Dominic's relationship deepened slowly, built on honesty now instead of omission. He came for dinner most nights, helping Sophie with homework, reading her stories before bed. One evening, as he explained basic coding concepts using Sophie's coloring books, the little girl looked up at him with serious eyes. "Dominic, are you going to be my daddy?" He glanced at Grace, who nodded, her eyes shining. He knelt beside Sophie, his voice gentle. "Would you like that?" Sophie threw her arms around his neck. "Yes, yes, yes, yes." That night, after Sophie was asleep, Dominic pulled Grace onto the couch. "I meant it, you know. I want to be her father. I want to be your husband. I want all of it. Grace kissed him, pouring 5 years of loneliness and longing into it. So do I. Margaret hosted a dinner the following week, her dining room filled with the strange, beautiful family they'd created. Grace, Sophie, Dominic, Vanessa, and Margaret herself, passing plates and sharing stories. Sophie sat between Dominic and Vanessa, chattering about her day. And for a moment, Grace just watched them all, her heart so full it ached. What are you thinking? Dominic asked, his hand finding hers under the table. That I have 2 families now, Grace said, echoing Sophie's words from her school project. And that's more than I ever thought I'd have. Later, alone in her room, Grace opened her laptop. Her manuscript was almost finished, the words flowing like they hadn't in years. She wrote about sacrifice and secrets, about the lies we tell to protect the ones we love. She wrote about forgiveness and second chances, about building families from broken pieces. And when she finally typed the last sentence, she sat back, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "We made it. We actually made it." 6 months after the custody resolution, Grace stood at the podium of a small bookstore in downtown Boston, her hands trembling as she held her novel. Spring sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the gathered crowd. She found Dominic in the front row, Sophie beside him, and Margaret next to them. In the back, partially hidden, sat Vanessa. "This is a story about family," Grace began, her voice steadying. "About the lies we tell to protect the ones we love, and the truth that sets us free." She read a passage about a woman who became a mother not through birth, but through choice, through sleepless nights, and scraped knees and bedtime stories. When she finished, the applause was warm, genuine. Afterward, Vanessa approached, her eyes red. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, hugging Grace. "Really proud. Thank you for coming," Grace said, meaning it. That evening, in the library after hours, Dominic found Grace shelving the last returns. He watched her for a moment, remembering the first day he'd walked in, broken and searching. She'd given him more than he'd ever hoped for. "Grace." She turned, and he was there, kneeling in the biography section where they'd first kissed. A ring box sat open in his palm. "I want to be Sophie's father," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to be your husband. I want to build a life with you, messy and complicated and real. Will you marry me?" Grace dropped to her knees, tears streaming. "Yes. God, yes." 3 months later, Margaret's garden blazed with summer flowers. Sophie wore a white dress, her basket of petals clutched tight as she walked down the aisle. Vanessa sat with her guitar, playing a song she'd written for the occasion, her voice clear and true. Grace wore a simple dress, her hair loose, her face radiant. When Dominic took her hands, his eyes shone with tears. "I promise to honor the family we've built," he said. "To love Sophie as my own, to love you with everything I have. I promise to choose you every single day." Grace's vows came through tears. "I promise to be honest, even when it's hard. To let you in, to trust you with my fears. I promise to never let secrets come between us again." They kissed as husband and wife, and Sophie cheered, throwing petals into the air. A year later, Grace sat in the same garden, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. Sophie practiced guitar with Vanessa, their heads bent together over the strings. Dominic emerged from the house carrying lemonade, and Grace watched her family, chosen and biological, messy and perfect, and felt complete. Sophie ran over with a drawing, her latest family portrait. It showed everyone now, Grace and Dominic, herself and the baby, Margaret and Vanessa. At the bottom, in careful printing, she'd written, "My big, weird, perfect family." Grace pulled her daughter close, kissing her curls. "It is perfect, isn't it?" "The best," Sophie agreed. That night, tucking Sophie into bed, Grace saw the question forming in her daughter's eyes. "Mommy, do you think Aunt Vanessa is sad she's not my mommy?" Grace chose her words carefully. "I think Aunt Vanessa loves you exactly the way she can. And that's enough. We all love you, Sophie. That's what makes us a family. Not the blood stuff. Not the blood stuff. The choosing stuff." Sophie smiled, satisfied, and drifted to sleep. Grace stood in the doorway, Dominic's arms around her, and watched their daughter breathe. 5 years ago, she'd said yes to a temporary arrangement that had become permanent. She'd lied and sacrificed and nearly lost everything. But standing here now, surrounded by the family they'd fought for, Built from broken pieces and second chances, Grace knew she'd do it all again. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every moment of fear. Because this love, this family, this beautifully imperfect life was worth it. All of it. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.